Hello Factorio people. Welcome back to the broadcast from Krastorio. Episode 17. We're gonna turn on the Megabase today. Fingers crossed. We're gonna turn on the Megabase. See exactly how that breaks everything. If you want to do the old like, comment, subscribe, that would be great. Really helps me out a lot. And without further ado, let's jump straight into it. When we left off last time, we'd expanded a lot of the basic things, and that put a damper on raw resources getting into the base. So I've expanded that. Here's a copper depot, for example. I've elected to do it this way around. So the train is forced to go to the depot first. Just goes here. And then when this train leaves, the next train can come and fill up. Obviously there's a quite strong argument to do it the other way around. Have the trains load and then wait when they're full, so that they don't have to, you know, this train is sat here doing nothing, it's empty. And that's a good point. Ultimately, I don't think it makes a huge difference. I can't remember why off the top of my head I elected to do it like this. I'm sure that will come back to me later. Anyway, and then I expanded ore enriching. So here's just a slightly different design for that. It takes 8 belts in. Let's turn it on. Let's turn it on. Simple stuff. But we need a lot of copper. We need a lot of copper. This does 40,000, sorry. Almost 8 full belts of enriched copper ore. And we're going to need about 3 of these to keep up. I also find out later down the line that this has a significant design flaw. Let me give you a moment or two to try and work it out. It comes down to how I tell a train, how and why I tell a train to bring in things. So because I've hooked all of these warehouses up to a circuit condition, and then the train station doesn't open until the sum of all of the warehouses is below that of a train, or 2 trains, in fact, for a big station like this. Because this isn't balanced on unloading, which most of my stations aren't balanced on unloading because they all come out of warehouses anyway, this causes a problem. So for every 1 copper ore that is prioritised from the recycling, that is 1 copper ore from this warehouse that is not being used. And as such, the warehouses very slowly become unbalanced. And about 5 hours down the line after I put this in, these warehouses were empty, this warehouse was full, and a train wasn't arriving because this had more than the train requirement limit in it. So you can fix that quite simply by just adding an 8 to 8 balancer about here, shifting everything over, adding an 8 to 8 balancer in. And I often don't put balancers in unloading stations because, yeah, they're coming out of warehouses, and where's a good example of something like this? This doesn't need to be balanced, right? Because it all comes out of one warehouse. These 4 belts are going to be balanced naturally. And then the output's going to be balanced naturally. So, like, I don't put balancers in for the sake of it in many places. So when I need a balancer, I often don't think about it. But you need a balancer here, folks. Because you can't even do what I did for the uranium and have this copper ore go back into one of the warehouses, because that's the same problem, right? You would need to have this go into a 1-to-4 balancer and then have each warehouse load properly. But it's a small fix, but it does cause me some problems down the line. Yeah. So we need a lot of copper because we need, and I'm not going to put it off for any longer, we need to do low density structures. And that absolutely eats through copper. So, alright, fine, I'll do low density structures. For God's sake. Here it is. I have gone off the deep end in terms of belt braiding, belt weaving. I can see why it's useful. Extremely useful, especially in this mod pack where there are, you know, 2 tiers of belts that are pretty good, and then the blue belts which are also kind of good. And it worked out quite well in this way because one row of these low density structures needs just more than a purple belt of copper, about a green belt of plastic, and less steel, but still. So this doesn't, because this needs ever so slightly more than a purple belt of copper, it's not quite 100% correct there. But it mostly works. It mostly works. So this will do less than 3,000, because as I say, it's not quite there by a very, very small, less, you know, about 5% of a belt. And you need 3 of these. You need 3 of these modules according to my numbers. So the bots are building the other 2 as we speak. This puts quite a large demand on the belt wall with the loaders and the belts and the undergrounds and stuff, but we're used to that now. We're used to that. We can't do big build projects like this very often, and thankfully we don't. So, is this broken yet? It's getting there. It's becoming broken. There's 20,000 copper ore in the warehouse that has this issue, and 17, 14 in the others. So it is very slowly breaking, and I don't notice that. There's another copper depot here, but there aren't enough trains here yet. I need to add some more trains to the system as and when. And I have just a little thing here for that. Just so that I can copy and paste train instructions from afar. Just get the robots to set up some trains and then we can send them off when they're ready. So of course, having 3 modules of low density structures going at full tilt puts strain on the base in many, many, many ways. But while this is all going, I decide to go over and do the lithium processing, because this is also vastly underscaled for 1,000 science per minute, and I'm still trying to work out whether you can use this module for all of your chlorine and hydrogen chloride needs. Because it's possible we can repurpose the chlorine and the hydrogen chloride to make it so that we don't need to do this here on site. So let's have a look at that. Okay, I did manage to squeeze. I didn't think I'd be able to get enough lithium processing for 1,000 science per minute into one grid section, but I have. And after a lot of playing around, the answer is no. You cannot, at least I can't, repurpose the chlorine and the hydrogen chloride to not require it to be used over here. So what I've elected to do is have a second chlorine outpost here, because this definitely overproduces chlorine, which you need for rare metal mining, because my calculator was telling me that this excess chlorine wasn't enough anyway. So now we have 2 chlorine trains. And I'm just going to continue to make the hydrogen chloride on site for the rare metal enrichment. It just didn't work. It wasn't enough. And then I would need more. I could add more hydrogen to this, and then this still isn't 100% right as well. I need to work out a better way of keeping fluids, prioritizing fluids to the different systems and things. Like obviously you want to prioritize lithium production here first before you then start pumping chlorine out to this. So this pump condition is currently saying only pump the chlorine out when there's more than 10,000 hydrogen chloride in the tank, so that the hydrogen chloride can continue to make lithium chloride while this train potentially becomes full. But then of course this lithium is already full now, and so we're not getting any chlorine at all. And that is the same case. That is the same situation over here, because we don't need any more rare metals. We're not making chlorine, which, you know, it sounds fine. Or you don't need more rare metals, so you don't need the chlorine. But you know, you'd rather have that buffer. You don't want anything to stall. Anyway, these will get fixed a bit later down the line, and I'll show you that. So with the lithium, we can make lithium sulfur batteries in the quantity that we need, and then with the lithium sulfur batteries we can make energy control units, and with the energy control units we can make matter stabilizers, and then we should have everything scaled to finally turn on the Megabase. Have I done the belt braiding yet? Yes, and I put the belt braiding here on the labs as well. Clearly this has gone wrong in some way. I must notice this and fix this later. Belt braiding sometimes breaks if you don't build everything in the right order or use an upgrade planner, because the upgrade planner ties together the other half of the belt. You can see here I'm selecting this belt, but naturally it's also upgrading this side as well, and I must have made a mistake in some way. But you know, I'm new to this whole belt braiding thing. It's a necessary evil. It definitely is useful though. It definitely is useful. I can see why it's good. Alright, let's build some more stuff. Here is the entire base. If you've not seen it yet this episode. Biters are gone, as we established. They're still there. I haven't used the command line yet thing, if you've been skipping ahead. I've not used the command line thing, it's just use the anti-biter virus capsules to get rid of them from everywhere we can see. I did iron in the same way with the depots and stuff, and changed the enriching to be this slightly newer design. Again, I haven't yet worked out that this is broken. This one is already even quite bad. 33,000 in here, 14,000 in here, so that must mean that the copper is almost certainly breaking by now. Yeah, 42,000 in this one, and these ones are almost empty in fact. Let's see if we can see it be broken at some point in the future. Anyway, lithium sulfur batteries, easy design. Energy control units. Belt braiding. My god, he's addicted. He's addicted to it now. Certainly made it very simple, didn't it? We still have to do this weird thing for the output. I don't know why I didn't do belt braiding for the output as well. It's not like we're outputting more than half of a belt of anything, but still, whatever. Yeah, I've rubber ducked myself into trying to work out why I didn't do output for belt braiding on the output as well. Anyway, energy control units, it's simple design. Just needs a lot of electronic components. That's all. And then those go into matter stabilizers. I seem to have become quite lazy in putting lights down in these builds. I think it's because now that I've got the night vision, when I'm out there actually physically building it, I don't notice that it's dark. So I'll try and do better with that one. Yeah, matter stabilizers and a charging system for the matter stabilizers. I'm surprised that this is as low as this to do 1,000 sites per minute. I thought this would be more. Same with the energy control units, to be honest with you. And then this is breaking because processing units running out in a weird way. Oh, that's because red circuits needs a buff. Anyway. Mostly. So, at this point, I have the bright idea of deciding to do a global alert system for things that are not keeping up. I was getting tired of having to look at this and working out why, if science was working and why it wasn't working and things. So I thought I can do a global alert system. That should be quite easy. So let's look at that. Here we go. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's beeping. I tried to make the sounds not too egregious. It's beeping. So all this does, this is the programmable speaker. All this does is hooks up to the existing combinator system and reads the cargo count that it was reading the whole time anyway, and then when it's less than 1,000, let me turn it up. This will definitely go off all of the time. When it's less than 1,000, it will beep. Not globally, just nearby. And it will also put an alert down here. There it goes. God, that's obnoxious. It will also put an alert down here, which I've customized to be requesting station is empty, show icon on map. So I pasted that down everywhere. Thankfully you can do that from the map view, just copy this. Thankfully the system is the same everywhere. This is why it was very important early on to have just this one decider combinator that takes the input and outputs it as a value of C, which I elected to be C for cargo, so that you don't have to go around and make this, you know, the thing for every individual item. So I put that down everywhere, and we can see where all the problems are. So, like, oh no, copper. Oh no, rare metals. And this is because we have turned on. You know, we are trying to do 1,000 sites per minute. We are capable of doing 1,000 cards per minute. Just only when everything is working. And clearly things aren't working. So we had a bit of time here. We can do it for a bit. But clearly things aren't keeping up. Clearly there are some issues, and that's what this does. Oh my god, there are a lot of issues, aren't there? So we got to the point where there were so many issues. Oh my god. There's lots of things. There's lots of things that finally turning on the Megabase has highlighted to be problems. And I made a small written down list here because there are quite a lot. There are quite a lot. So, one of them, for example, well, I mean petroleum, obviously, as we've seen. Petroleum throughput is just bad. I've got a little thing here, petroleum 1 of 2 or 3. It needs to be 3. It needs to be 3. Is this doing anything? There are 3 stations for Anyway, yeah, these are all the problems. These are all the problems. So this is new. This just needs some trains to help it get along. Let me just skip forward in time to when I fixed everything. Yeah, that's probably the best thing to do. Yes, we are very much in spinning plates mode, as I've said before. A plate starts to fall, you start spinning it to get it back on track. That causes other plates to start falling. That's the nature of Factorio. So yes, I redesigned ever so slightly once I was committed to this hydrogen chloride system. There was no buffer of hydrogen chloride, which was causing some problems. And now, at least, when there is a buffer of hydrogen chloride, I can prioritise chlorine. Or rather, I can not prioritise hydrogen chloride. So if there's less than 50,000 chlorine in this tank, just stop making hydrogen chloride for a bit, and just make sure that all of the chlorine goes here to be mined, to help rare metals mining. And then there is a buffer here because this overproduces hydrogen chloride. So this was, you know, one of the things. This overproduces hydrogen, but whatever, it's just hydrogen. Plastic. So plastic was interesting. The issue was that it was just too much. It was just trying to do too much. You remember it was all completely covered in beacons. And it was using so much petroleum that it was just a logistical issue with the trains bringing it in fast enough. And because this is only designed to just say bring me a train when there's less than a train's worth, it had a train limit of 1. I couldn't squeeze another train in. The train would have to stop here, and this would block the coal coming in. So I thought, well, I can either move coal up so that there is enough room for a second train. The smart option, though, is to just double this up, have this work slightly less hard, and have 2 stations that make plastic. So then now this is buffering because it makes a lot of plastic, and then that just means that we don't use quite so much petroleum in one place. So there's another plastic build here, and it just calms things down. So I make more plastic than I was making before. So in theory, I'm using more petroleum than I'm using before, but because the demands are split over various areas, it's slightly less of a headache. Stone needed a buff, because the amount of stone that we were putting into electronic components was so high that this one station here was not keeping up. If a mining outpost is within the grid, it's just called grid, so that the trains... and then there's a separate train for a grid one that doesn't have the depot icon. They all go to the same end goal, stone to assembly machine, but yeah, there's just trains that operate within the grid versus trains that operate in the depot. It's a bit messy, I agree, but as this empties out, there's not a replacement for it, so those trains will just be used. This Immersite patch actually completely ran out. If you can imagine that. There was another one here. Simple enough. We've actually got enough levels of mining productivity now that this overproduces. This design is overscaled, but I haven't fixed it yet. I just copy and pasted it over. More crude oil for the extra petroleum that we got. What other things were complaining? Yeah, lithium chloride was not 100% correct. just pump conditions were not set up completely accurately, so the whole thing stalled because it sent all the chlorine to this tank. So that's fixed just by... I should be over there really. I can't tell you how I fixed it, but it's fixed. It was wrong. It's fixed. Oh yeah, I've worked this out. I worked this problem out now. So now these are balanced. You can see 13,000 copper in each one. Haven't done the iron one yet. Oh, I didn't rebalance the copper ore in these warehouses, but I will go and do that manually, or it will fix itself later. What else have I written down here? Rocket fuel. Rocket fuel was wrong. Rocket fuel was stalling because when this was full of ammonia, there was nowhere for this hydrogen to go, so this wasn't doing anything. But then this oxygen was filling up this tank, so when we finally ran out of ammonia in this tank, we couldn't get more. As we started using the ammonia again, we couldn't get more ammonia because this oxygen had nowhere to go. So that's fixed by only pumping oxygen into this backup tank when there is less than... Only using these condensers when we need to, basically. So that these always have somewhere to output. Did that make sense? We need the oxygen and the hydrogen from these. The oxygen goes into a tank, the hydrogen goes into ammonia. So if the oxygen can't go anywhere, we also can't get ammonia, so the whole thing stalls. Thankfully we caught that early enough. I just came over here and saw that this line was empty and couldn't work out why for a bit, but thankfully there was enough of a buffer that it didn't cause any problems. What else? Plastic, stone, coal, lithium... Oh, rare metals. Rare metals. Oh yeah, there's a second rare metal patch out here now. This was never enough rare metals for 1,000 science per minute. The enriching process was enough, and the smelting was enough. It just wasn't actually enough raw rare metals. So I found the next decent patch, which is all the way out here. Set it up with this nice rainbow of of modules. Slightly less energy, but faster and a bit more productive. This on its own does 2 purple belts, which 11,000, which is about enough on its own. But still. And I've not done a depot for this just because the throughput demands for this aren't quite as much. Okay, so what is still broken? It is mostly anything that requires red and purple circuits, blue circuits, because this has been on my to-do list for ages. It's still running on blue belts. It still only has 1 train. It's basically causing all of the problems. So let's fix that, and a few other things that the global alert system has highlighted as well. Here we go. Pretty simple. A lot of issues were down to the fact that I didn't have standardized train unloading everywhere. I'd sort of decided that I was going to always do this, but I didn't do that early enough. So some of my designs still were only having like 2 belts of unloading. So factory production was acceptable, but just throughput, train throughput was basically failing. So in a lot of cases I've just all I've had to do is just add more or upgrade what I had from blue to purple. Eventually I'll just make everything purple. This is one of the downsides of also using belt braiding, is that in an ideal world I would just do an upgrade planner for belts over the whole base, and I can't do that anymore because I'm using belt braiding. So, you know. But basically, if a module has stopped working for whatever reason, and I see that it's still using an absolutely atrocious unloading system, like this is a good example. Some of it is still just like this. And that's fine. Like, this doesn't need more than half of a belt of rare metals, lithium, plastic, etc. But this just takes so long to unload the train that it just causes delays further down the line. Just unload the train and move on. Unload the train as fast as possible. And we can afford to do that now. So yeah, so red circuits is fine. Blue circuits is still fine. It only has the one train and it's still only unloading. It's still only on one cargo wagon. So I make a whole bunch of changes to things like that as well. So lithium sulfur batteries, for example, now has 2 wagons. I think I do the same with lithium. Oh no, lithium was always a 1-4 train. Why is this like this? Again, load the train fast, man. The alert system then decided it was going to start complaining about immosite powder. And I had a look at it, and I realised, why on earth am I taking why am I taking raw immosite, turning it into, how does this work? How does this recipe work? Makes it into like 10 powder or 6 powder or something ridiculous. Oh no, science has stopped. Quick, queue up some science. And then putting that into trains. Why am I doing it like this, huh? What is wrong with me? Obviously, just bring the crystals on site and make the crystals into powder via matter just right here. Because this build only needs 2 belts. Only needs 2 belts of powder. And one section of this makes 1 belt of 2 belts of powder. And the only places you need immosite powder are crystals and rare metals. Sorry, immosite plates. Immosite plates plus rare metals makes plates. Powder plus plates makes... Powder plus metals makes plates. Good God. My brain. It's failing. So, this was a very easy change. This solved some throughput issues. Because, yeah, as I say, this is a lot of powder. Why move the powder around when you can just move the raw immosite around? Yeah. So here's a module that is already doing that. So all I'm doing here is just waiting for the actual powder to run out. So this is already finished now, so this can just go. Just get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. Just wait for this finally to be empty, and then that's that solved, so that's nice. Module production, I changed module production not meaningfully. I just moved all the I just put the modules into purple chests and moved them over here into buffer chests, just so that they're always at the base, because I was sick of coming over to the base and then having to come over here to pick up enough modules to start a design and then go to where I wanted, so... and for quite some time now I've just been doubling up speed modules. For quite some time, in fact. Yeah, I haven't made a Mark III productivity module in, oh my goodness, 24 hours. And the reason for that is that, obviously, with the high tier of machines, you don't need as many productivity modules because you're not using as many machines as you're using beacons. So this only uses 4 productivity modules, but it uses 58 speed modules. So yeah, you need a lot more speed modules than productivity modules in Krastorio especially. So once that is solved, and yeah, the alerts are red circuits over here, Purple circuits over here. Matter stabilizers because we need purple circuits over here. Once those things are solved, I was confident that everything was fine. You know? So I waited for a bit. I waited. I walked away. I went into an AFK phase. And I let the base do its thing. And I was like, it's either going to be brilliant, I'm going to come back, and it's going to say everything's good, or things are going to have broken. Which one do you think happened, folks? Which one? It worked. I bet you didn't think I'd say that. I bet you were convinced I was going to say it didn't work. It worked. Look, this is an hour of 1,000 card consumption per minute. If I go to the 10-hour graph, it's actually been going for 2.5 hours. I tweaked the very last lab to have fewer modules so that this consumes exactly 1,000 cards per minute. This was causing some problems. Overscaling was causing throughput. Well, it was causing alerts to go off. There are still alerts that go off because it's so tightly tuned, right? Like this electronic control unit thing is complaining that there's less than 1,000 in the chest, and it is now just this second run out. But the train is on its way. It will get here before this becomes a problem. I think. Pretty sure. Or it might stop for a fraction of a second. There we go. No, it's coming. It's coming. Here we go. Look. See? Oh, it has stopped. Alright. Okay, it's stopped, but it's still charging some. And this train is full anyway. It's saying its destination full anyway. So it is working. It is working. Can you believe it? I certainly can't believe it. I went away for 2 hours. I was like, right, I'm going to leave it. Surely something will break. It didn't break. We've done it. 1,000 science cards per minute. Megabase achieved. I mean, maybe there's something that will break, like, in 10 hours, I suppose. I suppose crude oil might run out. I had to make a few changes to this. Mining productivity was... We're on mining productivity 24. We're about to finish mining productivity 24 for the low price of 115,200 science cards. But I noticed that it's still even happening now, that the throughput of these pipes... I had to split these into two separate fluid systems, just so that they go into the tanks better. So I just made that change there and here as well. So that helped a little bit. Any other minor changes? I stopped doing Covarex. I realised that Covarex was a waste of time once I hit 50,000 uranium. 235, I should say. I was so proud of this design, and I realised it has one flaw, and that is that you can't limit this chest to output the uranium, because if you don't want to do Covarex anymore, because the Covarex is before the fuel cell creation. So if you stop uranium-235 from coming out, you also don't get any fuel cells. And the way I've gotten around that is I've just told the inserters to not work if this has too much uranium in. But I would rather just have the fuel cells being made here and then have a limiter on the belt and not have any more uranium go down the belt should I have enough. But that's a very small thing, I suppose. It just requires this ugly circuit condition to come around here to read this belt. Because I don't want to drag wires all the way across the front of it. Okay. So what I've learned is that we are severely limited by train throughput. This makes 1,000 cards per minute, but there are certain things that are just like always going. Like the petroleum trains are... Did I not just queue you up? The petroleum trains are basically always going. Like, we use so much petroleum. Mining depots, not so much. We actually get away with that quite well. But, you know, not plastic, not stone. A lot of trains are moving around the base a lot of the time. And there's not really anything we can do about that. If we add more modules of things, we're just adding more trains to the system. So it's not just going to be a simple case of copying and pasting modules until we get to 5,000 cycles per minute. That's just not going to work. We really, if we're going to take this any further, and I want to, we're going to need to start abusing the matter mechanics in the game, properly start abusing them. And you can already see the benefits of that here. We're no longer moving around trains of powder, we're just moving around trains of immersite crystals. Raw immersite, I should say. We can take that step further and just move around the matter. And then we can take that even further and start moving around the cubes. So 1,000 matter as a fluid with a charge matter stabilizer you can turn into a matter cube. These stack to 100, 200, however many it is. So the sheer amount of matter you can get into a train wagon is vast. And then you can turn that matter into various things with various layers of complexity. And that should help us. We need to think about it in a bit more depth than that. You know, it's all well and good saying we'll have a matter plant here that turns the matter into copper ore, which then gets enriched. You know, if this instead of copper ore, this is matter, that solves this problem. But it doesn't solve this problem. We're still going to have so many copper ore trains going around the base because of the vast quantities of copper we need. Like, let's just have a quick look here. Copper's an important one. Over the last 10 minutes, 62,000 copper plates a minute. So we're going to need 5 times that much, at least, because I did say 5,400. So we're going to need 5.5 times more of that, basically. That's a lot of copper to go around the base. So once again, we need a big sea change. We need a shift. What's the word I want? We need to shift our frame of reference once again. And that's what we're going to try and tackle next time. But let's not leave that on a down note. Let's celebrate the Megabase, shall we? 1,000 cycles per minute. We did it. Thank you so much for all the support. Certainly a long way to go, it feels like. But with 1,000 cycles per minute, we can start researching loads of mining productivity. I mean, hours and hours. The mining productivity scales pretty harshly in Krastorio 2 versus just because of how expensive these two tech cards are. But yeah, the extra benefits you get from mining productivity in terms of turning raw resources into matter. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about matter because that's what we're going to talk about in depth next time as we do the next phase shift of the base. So yes, thank you so much for watching. This save file is, oh god, 114 hours to get just this far. It does include some AFK time, I suppose, and that does include a lot of me faffing around and doing a lot of testing and stuff like that. So, you know, I said I was a slow player, but it's taken 115 hours to get this far. Oh, there's the Spidertron out there ready to start expanding the visuals, because the pollution cloud is actually reaching outside of what we can see, so we need to do some work on that as well. Anyway, this outro is going on for far too long. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please let me know with a like and a comment, and if you want to see more Krastorio Megabase, be sure to subscribe. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.